Hello, my name is Chuck Wolfe. Over the years, I've worked in many different roles, including leading my own leadership consulting company since 1994. I've worked for and with some of the best companies and universities in the world, and have had the opportunity to work with government officials, military organizations, and public and private schools. I'm a leading expert and pioneer in emotional intelligence. Since 2009, I've been a volunteer hosting a radio show I created called The Emotion Roadmap: Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. I really enjoy making a difference in people's lives. The show is on award-winning community radio station, WPKN in Bridgeport, Connecticut. In recent years, Simsbury Community Television has been sharing my shows on their station and on YouTube. My sincere hope is that everyone who watches regularly will learn how to use the Emotion Roadmap in their own lives by listening to people who call in to get help with challenges at work, home, and in communities. To learn more, go to www.emotionroadmap.com. If you have a comment or question, email me at cjwolfe@cjwolfe.com. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Chuck Wolfe at WPKN. Listen to Supported Radio in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's a lovely day out. I hope you're all enjoying the day. And I just wanted to let you all know that you have a chance to call in at 203-336-9756. You're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. For those of you that have been waiting to call and wanted to talk to me about something going on in your life that is something that's challenging to you, that has something to do with emotions, where you're feeling some strong emotions and you're unclear about what you might do next and how you might do it, I suggest that you give me a call. Again, it's Listen to Supported Radio and WPKN 89.5 FM, and this is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I'm Chuck Wolfe, your host. I've been doing this show this is 15 years now. Kind of got off to a quick start today just to have a chance to talk with you and to give you some insights into what's going on in my life today. I just got back from vacation, and I'm glad to be able to be here with you. We had a nice vacation, my wife and I. We took a trip down to Hilton Head, down to the beautiful beaches down there. And some of the lovely places we visited, a lot of nice places to eat, some great music we listened to. Went to a jazz club down there that was really a lot of fun. And I hope that you're enjoying your summer too. But one of the things I wanted to chat a little bit about this morning, there's two things really. I always come in with something that I thought is useful and informative and practical and possibly gives you some insights into things that you might be experiencing yourselves and something that you may want to talk about. And one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about is caregiving. Caregiving in the sense that you're someone who has some responsibilities for others. One of the things that happened in my life recently is my lovely wife, Barbara, who I hope is listening today, has had a fall and a concussion. And boy, it's one of those things where it seems like you should be able to get better pretty quick if there's no brain bleed, which there wasn't, thank goodness. But sometimes it just takes a really long time where you can't watch television. You're supposed to limit your screen time as best you can. Keep yourself in a dark place. Limit your physical activity. These sound like things that you could be able to do for an hour or two or three. But for days at a time, weeks at a time, months at a time, it's really hard. And then as somebody who is the one person who lives with my wife, it's like it falls on me to try and be as good as I can in being supportive. It's really interesting because one of the fascinating parts of this world that I'm in with emotional intelligence is that being smarter about emotions impacts our lives in so many different ways. And this is one that's impacting ours right now. And, you know, as much as I want to be on all the time and be available and supportive and caring, I think I'm doing a pretty good job. But I'm not perfect, and there are times when I'll miss, and I won't be quite as supportive as I could have been, or I'll be irritated or aggravated with something happened in my own life, and hey, there's a need for me to do something for her. And I really am trying very hard to maintain my own emotional controls, because I adore you if you're listening, and I want to be there for you every second that I can. So this is something that I think all of us go through at different times with different people, whether it's a child we're caring for, an aging parent, a sibling, even a friend. I was talking to one of the people here on the station just before I got on the air, who also had a friend who had a major fall and was really laid up for a long time. And, my friend, he was really supportive, and it takes a lot to do that kind of support for somebody else. And one day I might need it, or you might need it. But whatever happens in our lives, isn't it great when you can be there to be there for someone you love? It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to do it. It brings up in my mind one of those things that I learned a long time ago. I grew up in I want to talk about generations a little bit. I'm one of those baby boomers that grew up with this idea of free love emerged in the 60s and 70s, this idea of free love and love is great. And this is just all this, it really was a lot about sex, I think, at the time. But one of the things that I learned at the time in the 70s, I worked with a psychiatrist. I had a chance to be a family therapist and be part of his practice. And the reason I got to know him was I had a radio show way back then, and I interviewed him on the show. And I was asking him, we were talking about a number of different things. And somehow the conversation about free love and, loving people and it's how it was just talked about a lot back in the 60s and 70s. And he said, it's really interesting how people are viewing love these days. He said, a lot of young people think love is all about the romance and the sex and this wonderful intimacy that we can have with each other when we're young. And he said, but real love, true love that lasts through the ages is so much more than that. It's loving someone enough that when you're in your 70s or your 80s, and the person that you love is sitting there in a rocking chair and needs his or her diaper changed, and you're the one who gets to do that, and you don't mind because you love this person so deeply that it's your greatest pleasure to keep them in your lives and do whatever you can to keep them there as long as you possibly are able to. And that moment of that conversation with him, made me think about that as I got into my 70s. Because it's like one of those things where, when you're first attracted to someone, when you're very young, it is a lot about the attraction. It is a lot about the romance and, the sexual intimacy. I mean, a lot of that is what starts relationships. But what makes relationships last, at least in my opinion, is the idea of a friendship, a lifelong friendship, a deep, deep friendship where your partner, the person you spend your life with, is your best friend, or at least one of your best friends. You may have other best friends too, but I mean, it's just this idea of a partnership that goes on and on and on. So if you're in a caregiving mode and you want to talk a little bit about that and you've got someone you're caring for and you want to give me a call, the number's 203-336-9756. Another aspect of this caregiving that I wanted to talk about is one of the people that I got to meet as a result of a conference where I attended with my wife about something else going on in her life that people have conferences monthly. It's an association for essential tremor, where there's a neurologist associated, and they occasionally have guest speakers. And one of the guest speakers one time was a faculty member from Yale, a woman named Joan Monum. And if you've listened to my show, you know that I've had a number of connections with people from the Yale University, including Yale, the former Yale president who just retired, Peter Salovey, because Peter was one of the pioneers in emotional intelligence. And I got to work with Peter and his colleagues and friends, Jack Mayer and David Caruso, way back in the late 1990s and early 2000s, where the emotion roadmap, the whole idea for this show, was established way back then. But Joan is working at Yale, and her particular expertise and specialty is caregiving. And after the meeting, I went up and talked to her about it. I said, I think this emotion roadmap that I've created might have some benefits for people in the caregiving mode, because I know I've talked with people who are in caregiving situations. And at one time, my wife and I were doing some caregiving for her mom. And so I've been there, and I know that controlling your emotions and trying to influence the emotions of the person being given care, because a lot of us don't want to be dependent on anybody else, and we find it extremely difficult and upsetting that we can't do for ourselves when we've lived a very independent life or interdependent life, and it's really hard. And I thought emotionally, there's got to be some understanding that the emotion roadmap about changing emotions, thinking about changing the narrative around certain emotions, thinking about, setting up a firewall to protect you from some emotions at certain points in time, the kinds of skills that are associated with what I've begun to teach people in this emotion roadmap could be really helpful here. And so Joan had some of her own concerns about what's going on in her own family, and we talked a bit about that. She felt, this seems really, really helpful, Chuck. And I wonder if we can do something that puts this in a research document that would allow us to search out and get grant money to see if we can start teaching people about this emotion roadmap and how it can help with caregiving. And so there's a couple of students from Southeast Asia that are working as interns with Joan this semester at Yale University, and they're doing some work on understanding this emotion roadmap I've created, and very, doing a deep dive into all the work that I've done in this area, and writing a paper that's going to become the focus for a study where we're going to use the emotion roadmap and see what, in fact, we can gain. Because Joan's convinced, as am I, that this is a real strategy that can benefit people in those such circumstances. And I'm really looking forward to this, because I think if you've listened to the show other times and you're a regular listener, again, thank you all for tuning in who are regular listeners. For those of you new to the show and interested, the show's on the first and second Wednesdays of the month from 12 to 1 p.m. as part of the community strip here at WPKM. In any case, this idea of an emotion roadmap is the concept that involves trying to understand that our feelings, while always informative, it's always useful to know what we're feeling and why. But they're not always helpful. At the same time, they're informative. There are times when what we're feeling actually is in conflict with what we need to get done. If I want to be inspirational, motivational, and excited, I don't want to be depressed about something that just happened 5 minutes before I go on stage and speak to a group of people. So if I get a phone call or I get a text or some kind of notification that something bad has happened in my life, somewhere in some aspect of my life tied to a family member, a friend, or somebody I care about, or I find out myself, I got a diagnosis about something that I'm really concerned about myself, and yet I'm about to speak to an audience about the power in knowing more about your emotional control and your emotional relationships with others, and how this tool that I've created can help you with that. And I need to be inspirational, motivational, and informative, and practical, and funny, and entertaining, and engaging. How do you do that when you just heard something that's really disturbing and upsetting? How do you do it? How do you do that? Well, I've learned there were ways that you can do that, and I'm teaching people those ways. And this is the concept behind the emotion roadmap. And this is what Joan is hoping to find in terms of find ways to introduce this to the caregiving communities around the world. And I'm on board with it. I'm really excited about it. I'm hopeful that the research proves what I think I already know, which is that, of course, this is going to be useful to people who are dealing in these kinds of situations. So that's one of the things I wanted to chat about today. So if you've got something going on in your life that has to do with caregiving and you'd like to talk about it, it's a good time to do it. 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, Joan. Yeah, I have a daughter that has been an alcoholic since she was young. And we're taught in Al-Anon not to give help too much. And right now she needs financial help, but I've done it in the past, and it's all, financially, it's only money, and she's going to get it in the end. But I was and then now I have an appointment with her therapist, who's probably going to say she needs money or else she can't go to her meetings. So it's kind of like, how do you feel? I think it's an interesting topic as well, because I am a nurse, and the people I work with don't even take care of what they're supposed to take, the responsibilities for taking care. And then the management is putting pressure on us to put pressure on them. We're busy on the unit, but we have to be accountable for them to do their job. And then there's a lot of course, they could stab us back in the back at retaliation. But so, there is a need for caregiving, even within the caregivers that are supposed to be caregivers.
Right.
So it's a very interesting topic, but I don't want to go off. But what do you think about giving too much care, like to an addict, money, or what do you think? Is money shouldn't be part of care, or it shouldn't be part of the emotion, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of Jonah. There's a lot to sort out here. So let me start. Yeah, you had two different things, right? One is about the workplace that you're in, and the other is about your daughter, right?
Yes.
Right. So let's take a look.
Just do one.
Yeah, well, that's okay. The show's here to help people, so I can try and do both. Let's start with your daughter, though, because that's the one that's closest to home.
Right.
I have a cousin that is someone that was somebody that was deeply loved. He was the oldest grandchild on my mother's side of the family. My grandparents loved him the best. He was always the favorite and really smart. But he had some mental health problems. And over the years, those mental health problems kind of took over his life. And yet he was sane enough that he kept seeming to bounce back and be able to survive, not really thrive, but survive. And yet one of the things that he did was he kept coming back to his parents and asking for help and money at times. And, they, as much as they wanted him to get better, they couldn't say no. And so it drained a lot of what my aunt landed up trying to live on, because a lot of it was gone because it went to this son. And I loved my cousin, and I wanted him to do well, but I also felt at some point giving and supporting is enabling, and that's what you've heard, I'm sure, at the Al-Anon meetings, right? The concern
right.
is
exactly
right. So the enabling part is like
too much help.
Yeah,
too much.
Yeah. So I think honestly, I can't tell you what the right amount of money is. That's something you and if you have a partner or a husband, you want to discuss that in your own mind and say, hey, this is what we can afford to do, and we're willing to do a certain amount, but we can't do more than that. And if we feel like we're enabling the alcoholism to continue and we're not helping, at some point, and this is where you need therapy, because this is a really hard thing to do.
Right.
This isn't about so much what's the money exchange, because there could be other things. There could be how much time do we give to this? At what point do we say enough? We can't do anymore? And if we feel like what we're doing makes us feel better for the moment, but if we step back from it, it feels like, no, it's wrong to keep enabling this. At some point, if my daughter's going to ever live a life that has any meaning to it, she has to find some way within herself to get healthy. And what you don't know is how much do you do or not do. And I can't answer that on a phone call other than to say, this isn't about your daughter at this point, because all the research is out there about, yes, you keep doing things that enable the behavior that you want to stop because you love them and you think you're helping them, and you're not. And that's in the alcoholism, literature experience forever. That message is out there. But I think for you to feel like you're okay in your own mind, you've got to ask yourself, what is okay for me to do and to feel? What can I do to enable myself to at some point stop enabling my daughter and live with myself no matter what happens, because you don't know what's going to happen. And it's not necessarily going to be something that's pretty that's going to happen. And yet, if you don't stop enabling, she never gets healthy, and you're part of it. So it's a really hard message. It's a really tough one. And I don't know that a lot of people can do this on their own without going to a therapist, going through all the things in your mind, because this is all deep rooted in what did you learn growing up? What are the messages you're carrying around in your head? What's your self-talk telling you about all this stuff? And it's conflicted for most people. It's conflicted because on the one hand, I want to do everything and anything I can for my child. Of course I do. I'm their parent. And yet at the same time, the things that I'm doing that look like in the moment that are helpful are contributing to the worst case scenario for her. And so part of you has to somehow have some help getting that message and holding on to it. And then it's kind of like in alcoholics, when they partner up and they have, I feel like I want to drink, but I'm calling you because I don't want to drink when you have a partner. And so a therapist or somebody in your life that you can count on that says, I feel like I want to give her the money this time, but I know it's wrong. So I'm calling you to tell me that it's okay that I don't give them. I mean, you need somebody in your life that helps with that.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Agrees with you. And right. But that agrees with you. That's not a family member that's saying, give her, what are you doing? Give her money. You get those outside messages too. You're doing something wrong. It's your fault. Give her money.
So, right. And so you feel guilty and all that stuff comes up and then you'll end up doing it. And then you look back 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 months later and you say, I did the wrong thing. So, and again, I can't tell you what's the right number and when you stop because that's a much more complicated. But my guess is, either you or or maybe you've got somebody in your life or you see somebody that you find that you trust that's a helpful therapist that has dealt with people in similar circumstances. It's always better to find somebody that has some experience in this kind of world.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Does that help?
It helps a lot. I think I have too much emotion. So when I listen to your show, it kind of gives me a reprieve that, emotions are not everything. Take a deep breath.
Right.
So I think that your show is very helpful.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. You want to stay on for the other piece? I mean, okay, so the other piece is about what's happened when somebody else isn't doing what they're supposed to do in the workplace.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really interesting because it was actually one of the things I wanted to talk about anyway is this idea of, what you have in that circumstance is a toxic culture. Because when somebody's allowed to get away without being accountable and it falls on you and you get called out, if what needs to happen doesn't happen and somehow it wasn't what you didn't do, it's somebody else and yet you're being punished for it, it's like, what are you supposed to do? You kind of throw your hands up and you kind of hate coming to work when stuff like that's happening and it makes it really awful.
Like a blow up. Yeah.
Right.
Like a blow up is going to happen.
Right. And so for me, it's one of the things I've been working on in recent times with clients and my professional work outside of the radio is this idea of how do you want people to feel at work and working with leaders and owners of companies to try to understand what makes somebody feel like they can't wait in the morning to get up and go to work. As much as that sounds crazy, there are places where people really focus on how do we want workers to feel, and what can you do to make that real. And so here's I like to use this example because people get it. In organizational life, for a long time, they've spent a lot of time in organizations trying to get people to understand the power of shared values. Have you ever heard that term, shared values?
No.
Okay. Well, lots of organizations have this concept that, hey, if our values of the organization and our leaders align with what people who are coming to work feel also, what they value too, like respect and integrity and openness and accountability, those are kind of things that show up in these lists. But then they're not substantive when they're just words. So when somebody in an organization where somebody knows that, hey, one of our shared values is respect, and I'm glad we have that. I said, I'm glad you have it too. But do you feel respected? do you feel respected at work is different than just knowing that we have respect as a shared value. And also, are you respectful to others at work? It isn't just about you feeling respected. Are you creating the feelings of respect in other people because you're respectful? And that's the work that I've been doing lately in organizations. And it isn't just for workers, because I think sometimes workers have family needs outside of the organization. Their own family has needs, and they can't come to work or be as focused at work, or they have to drop some things that they were working on after work because they have to run home and take care of somebody at home, or something's going on in their life. And are you, as an organization, caring about how people's family members feel about them working at this particular place? So I focus on workers, on families, on, of course, how customers feel, because businesses, nonprofit or profit, don't exist unless customers are coming to them. And then also vendors, which are often a group that feels very disrespected because you don't have to call a vendor back, but you do have to call a customer back on a timely basis. But even vendors can do things for you if you respect them and care about them and you show support. And finally, in your own community, does your organization do anything for your community so the community is glad you're there? And if you are working and thinking about how you're creating feelings for everybody in the workplace, then when somebody behaves like the persons that you're talking about, they don't get to stay. They have a conversation. It's always a dignified conversation saying, look, you have a certain responsibility here. It can't fall on the nurse because the nurse has got her own or his own responsibilities. And if you can't do this job the way that we are expecting you to do the job, then we'll have to find somebody else who can. Now, is there something going on that's blocking you that I need to pay attention to? Is there some reason why you can't get to what you need to get to? Maybe there's some system issues. Maybe there's some structural issues. Maybe there's reasons why you aren't being accountable. And it isn't just about you and your personality and your attitude. It might be about other things. So let's investigate, not just blame you, and see what could be done to make sure you have everything you need to be accountable. Then the expectation is you are accountable or you don't get to stay. And it's not a message of I'm attacking. I'm just saying for this organization to be healthy, for everybody to feel like it's a good place to be, then everybody's got to be accountable. It's funny because when I'm in LinkedIn and I tend to comment a lot on things I see, and somebody was saying, if you got a worker that comes in late and they've had a few late times and you need them to be there on time, how do you respond to them? And a lot of the commenters, people writing in, would say things like, hey, you want to be empathetic. You want to try and understand why they're being late. And maybe there's a child issue or something. Again, it's really, I think that's important. I don't disagree with that. But I also think it's really important for that person to understand and be empathetic to the people that are impacted by their being late. They need to understand that when somebody doesn't do what they need to do and it falls on you, they need to be told and be thoughtful about how you're feeling about what's going on. It isn't just about being empathetic to them. You want to understand and make sure that it's not a system. Because sometimes people, it's not about their attitude. It's about the actual way things are set up. They don't always work the way they're supposed to. And sometimes people aren't doing what they're supposed to do because they can't. The system just causes all kinds of confusion and it doesn't allow them to get there on time to do what they need to do. That's a system problem, not a person problem, and you need to separate things out like that. But let's assume that the persons, and there's more than one, who just feel like there's no consequence. So why do I got to work hard? Let it fall on them. Nobody's blaming me. And they need to understand how it's making other people feel and how it's impacting you. What you just said is, I can't believe you're the only one upset by this. There's probably a lot of people, and that's what I mean by a toxic culture and why I think it's so important to pay attention to how people feel. So I think I don't know that you can influence this, except maybe if there's a few of you, and you, I don't know if you're unionized or not, but maybe there's a supportive boss somewhere out there that you could say, hey, look, I don't mind helping out on occasion, but this is way too often. And I think these people need to be accountable. They shouldn't be here. And I think you need to understand and be fair with them and see if you can help them to be accountable. Maybe there's something I don't understand. I don't know. I'm just telling you, for the patient and for me and for others, this isn't working the way it needs to work. And if we're going to be a place that people are going to want to come to every day, and our customers are going to feel good about what we're capable of, then some stuff needs to change. And having that kind of conversation, if it makes sense.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Hope that's helpful. And thanks for the phone call. I appreciate
Very
it.
helpful. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, John. Okay, well, so one of the things I wanted to chat about today, as I was reading this Wall Street Journal article this morning, I don't know if it was, read it online, so I don't know if it was today's paper or yesterday's paper, but it was about Gen Z. There's a lot of complaints about people born between 1997 and 2012, I think it is. I think I got the dates right. So it's young people, and there's a fair amount of problems with this group that are different than problems with other groups. And it's really interesting because there was a study done, and this was in the journal, that reported that people who are in this generation, so, in the early 20s, who are in the workplace, and they were asked, what would you like to see in the workplace that would be helpful to you? That would make coming to work more enjoyable, that would make your actual work experience more meaningful, more purposeful, because they care about those things. They care about meaning and purpose, and they want people to respect and care about them. And so, in the past, the authors of the study said, a lot of times we'd hear from people, hey, I'd like a gym. I'd like the chance over lunchtime or maybe before or after work to go down and work out for a little while, and having a gym right here on premise, it would be great. But they didn't ask for a gym. They asked for a therapist. They wanted a therapist. They wanted to have a therapist there. And then there was the comparison. I don't know how many of you have watched the show Billions when it was, it's still available to watch, but it's not running anymore. The show ended. But there was a woman named Wendy Rhodes who was a psychologist, a therapist for the people that worked in this high-end mutual fund, hedge fund. And a lot of people interacted with Wendy, and Wendy was as a model. I've been a psychotherapist, and I thought the show the writers were really good at the way they presented the cases and how smart they made Wendy seem. So they actually were in the article, in the journal article, they said it's kind of like Wendy Rhodes, but the woman they were talking to, who is a psychologist in one of these companies, said, no, it's not really like that. But I mean, she didn't say what it was like, but she says, people are coming. First, people were a little reluctant, and now every moment that I'm there, I've got somebody coming in to see me. It's like the routine they have is like you can go 12 times a year, I think, for about 45 minutes each. So it's not like you can go every day. So they do have some limits on it. But I thought it's fascinating that people were requesting a therapist in the workplace. Now, that's pretty unusual that people would go to a therapist in the workplace, but not so much anymore, because what I find from we have 3 daughters, and it seems like lots of people are going to therapists these days, much more than when I was growing up. It's much more acceptable to go and talk with somebody about what's going on in your life. And I wondered, I started to think, well, why are people in Gen Z more in need of this than perhaps other generations? And I don't know that they actually are more in need, but I do think there's some reasons for it. I mean, if you think about Gen Z, they grew up with so much more screen time than many of us did. We all look at our phones, but the Gen Z kids, they're video gamers. They're constantly on social media, and also, and with my daughters that are, they're millennials. They're typically a little older, and they stopped calling at one point and did texting mostly. I mean, if we wanted to talk to them, we had to text them instead of just pick up the phone and call them. And that was a change. And, one of the things I really respect from one of the leaders I've worked really closely with over a lot of years, he always said, if you got something meaningful to say to somebody and something tough to say to somebody especially, you want to do it in person. And if you don't do it in person, it's much better than to do it by phone rather than by email. And email's the last choice. And texting, never. And yet, so many people in Gen Z, it's always about text. But also, they're into virtual reality. And, a lot of them have avatars and see themselves in, like, virtual worlds. And And instead of this going out to play when you're a young kid and growing up and just being outdoors and trying to figure out who are these other people in my neighborhood and how am I going to get along with them? And I'm mad at this person, but I like this other person, and I'm going to get this person, and trying to work out all those things you do when you're kids on the outside. If you're only on screens, you're not doing that. You don't have those experiences. And then COVID intervened with a lot of these people, right? We had COVID that isolated us from one another for a couple of years, and that was unbelievable, but even more meaningful for people in their formative years, perhaps, So there's lots of reasons why perhaps this generation is tough. And also, just in my wife and I, when we were walking around, I remember in Newport, Rhode Island one day, and we were in a shop, and a fellow says, "I'm sorry, I can't get to you. I don't have any staff here. Somebody just quit on me." I said, "Really? Oh, that's too bad." He said, "Yeah, and he started to talk about Gen Z. He said, it's funny. In years past, I have somebody working for me, and they didn't do something right. I'd say, hey, listen, can I talk to you for a minute? I was always nice about it. But when I do that with a Gen Z, or you didn't call them Gen Z, but with the very young kids now that are working for me, they say, you can't say that to me, and they walk on and quit." It's like, and then this whole, there was a lot of writing material around quiet quitting, people not even telling you, just not showing up one day because somebody in the workplace was not nice to them. Where when I was growing up, of course you had to deal with a lot of crap. That's why they called it working part, right? You weren't going there because it was fun. There's a lot of things that you had to get through and get by and learn to live with in order to get along. Well, I think, just like I was telling Joan a minute ago, I think there's a change in what we want to do that is not just reactive, which a therapist, it's a good idea. There isn't anyone in my experience, in my lifetime, that doesn't benefit from having someone who is a sympathetic, empathetic person willing to listen to you without judgment and help you just be more clear in your own mind about what's going on and why you're conflicted about something, and then trying to help you by offering you choices of different ways of approaching or handling what's going on if you're inclined to have them offer you advice, or they're just willing to listen and not necessarily offer any advice unless it's specifically asked for. Who wouldn't benefit? Who doesn't benefit from that? Everybody could use that, I think, in their lives. So that's partly one of the things that is, I think, reactive by having a therapist. But what if you wanted to be proactive? What if you wanted to create this idea of, as I was telling Joan before, if you're just tuning in, I'm talking about this idea of shared feelings in the workplace. In a paper I'm going to have published in a United Kingdom journal that targets senior HR people, human resource people, and companies, I present a case study of a company, several companies owned by one person, that I work with over the last several years that is really now enjoying the benefits of a company where everybody, for the most part, everybody feels cared about, supported, and valued and respected, feels those things. Doesn't just talk about them. They actually feel those things. She said I just had a conversation with her the other day, and she said, Chuck, what we set out to do, we've done. I'm feeling so great about the things that we set out to do around this concept of shared feelings. She said, I even had somebody who was leaving me because her husband is really desperate to start a family business, and she's going to play a key role in that. And so she came to me reluctantly and said, I don't really want to leave, but I need to do this for my family, for my husband, and so I'm going to leave. But I got to tell you, one of the things that I've noticed since I've been working here is that I love coming to work. I love showing up here. I love the way people are supportive of each other. I love when there's a problem, everybody jumps in and tries to help one another figure out how to solve the problem. I love that when somebody's overcommitted, that other people who've got a little bit of space, maybe make space to come and support them across different lines. It isn't just in your own area. It's everybody, if they know about somebody that needs some extra help, is saying, what can I do? How can I help? Or they're not even just asking. They're just coming over and doing stuff. I said, I've never worked in a place like that. It feels great. Now, these are smaller companies that I've worked with. Can it happen at a big company? Sure it can. Or it can happen in a division or in a team. But it can happen. The idea is that you go from talking about things like respect and accountability and so forth, and you start living them. A lot of people talk about the need to want to be empowered in the workplace. Empowered means simply that I'm allowed to do what I'm capable of doing, and my boss doesn't look over my shoulder. They don't micromanage me. They just leave me alone, let me go, and let me run and do my thing. And I feel great when that's happening. So a lot of us would like to feel that way, wouldn't we? But what if something's new to us and we don't really know how to do it? Do we want to be left alone? Maybe some of us do, but that's not in the best interest of ourselves or our companies. When you really don't know how to do something that's new and it's a new technology you're being introduced to, it's a new product that you have to learn how to use and sell and manage and market or whatever your role might be. Or you're in finance or accounting and there's a new system for managing payroll or financial controls or financial investments, and you have to learn again, sure, we want people to do what they're capable of doing, but when something's new, we want whoever's the expert, maybe it's the person we report to, or maybe it's somebody in a technical area from information technology perhaps, or a specialist in that accounting software that comes in and works with us for a while until we get it, until we know how to do it. And then we're empowered. But you don't just go from, you can't just have everybody walk in the door and be empowered. It just doesn't work that way. And it's not good for the people and it's not good for the companies. So I think this whole idea of being accountable and being empowered are powerful, but they have to be planned for and thought out. And like I was saying to Joan, one of the ways I married, those of you who listen know that I use this emotion roadmap. And for those new to the show, the emotion roadmap works like this. When often smart people who are stuck, when they're stuck, they're experiencing some kind of emotional struggle. Something inside them is possibly upsetting. It's possibly confusing. In any case, it's creating a bunch of uncertainty and doubt about what to do next. It might be a conversation that you need to have with someone over a decision that you disagree on. It might be a conflict based on your view of what should happen next and what somebody else thinks should happen next, and you're both convinced you're right. It could be a disagreement of how to use the existing resources. You have a group that feels as though it's critical that your group gets a certain level of resource, money and other, or maybe equipment. And then another group says, I understand your need and I appreciate it's real. It's not as important to the company as what's happening in my area of responsibility. And I have a greater need for that money or equipment. So the whole idea is that we have challenges throughout our lives, whether it's at work or at home. And the way we deal with those challenges is hopefully we try to be sensitive and understanding of how we're feeling and how the other person or people that we're dealing with are feeling. But when we're uncertain about how we're feeling and what to do about it, and what we're uncertain about how we're going to make somebody feel, or we think we're going to make them feel awful, or they're going to react poorly to this, or they're going to fight with us about this, we really get stuck. And that's where the emotion roadmap comes into play, because I ask you, what are you feeling about the circumstance or situation or challenge you're facing? What is it that you think, if there's someone else involved, that he or she or they are feeling, anyone that's key to what's going on, what are the key feelings for them? And if the feelings, always informative, but not helpful, if they're not helpful, what can you do about those feelings? And in the emotion roadmap, if somebody calls in and asks me what they can do different, I'll often take you through, how do you want to feel? How do you want the other person to feel? Now, like with Joan, I just kind of shortcutted that because alcoholism is a well-known problem with lots of causes, but the symptoms are pretty similar. And this concept of enabling is well known in that world. And it is a conflict that is ongoing, never goes away for parents of somebody who's an alcoholic. And so sometimes you really do need therapeutic help. Now, you might be able to get that from somebody who's not necessarily a therapist, just somebody in your life that you trust, that somebody that's been a mentor to you, or somebody that's just really good with relationship skills and really helpful to you. and might be able to give you the kind of support that you need. If not, you can go to a therapist, particularly somebody that deals a lot with people with alcoholism, because I think it is kind of a unique world in there. Drug addiction and alcoholism they're not exactly the same, but they have a lot of parallel issues associated with them, in my opinion, anyway. So I think a lot of times we're in unique spots. It's not that other people haven't faced the same or similar kinds of challenges. It's just that we have our own way of dealing with things. So I like to use the example of, because a lot of times this is true for people. Have you ever been anxious, really anxious, and wanted to feel either confident or at least calm? Have you ever felt that in your life? And a lot of times people say, yeah, I have. Yeah, I have. Well, in those particular moments, were you able to find some way, digging deep inside yourself, or just something popped up, something accidental, or incidental, just showed up in your life and it helped you. And you figured out, hey, if I do this or think that or do these other things, I can go from being anxious to being calm, or maybe even confident. And I had some history with that, with some of the things that actually happened in my life. And when you start to realize that maybe if you're in a moment now where you're feeling extremely anxious and you need to feel confident, that you've been in moments and times like this in the past and you figured it out, you feel less panicked and more assured that you can get from where you are, what you are feeling, to what you want to feel that's more ideal to feel. That's the concept of a roadmap. How do I get from what I am feeling, when my feelings, always informative, I always say that, always informative, but not helpful. What do I do to get to what I want to feel that's going to be really helpful and actually ideal to feel? And how do I get there? And if I have some history and some past experience, can I learn from that past experience and take and borrow some of the things that I might have done back then? Circumstances might have been totally different, nothing to do with each other, but the feelings were similar. And I was able to move from anxious to confident or anxious to calm. If you're able to look back in your own past experience and find something that will help you in your current circumstance, it's the beginnings of feeling like, I can do this. You go often from feeling somewhat hopeless to hopeful, just in thinking that you've done it in the past and realizing that there might be one or two ideas from the past that you can use here in this here and now situation. So if you want to call, I've got time for probably one more call. If you want to give me a call about anything going on in your life, and I can use the roadmap and this whole idea of creating shared feelings with you as my customers who listen to the show. Always nice to get nice feedback about the show. The number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. I'll wait a minute and see. By the way, again, if you've got something and you think you'd like to call, I'm on the first and second Wednesdays of each month. So I'll be back. But I also know that if you wait to the very end and you call, I can't help you. But I've got a little bit of time right now if you want to call. So if you got something going on in your life that's a challenge, this is a really good time to call. And I'll give you the number again. Wait a minute. 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. So I don't have anybody with some burning desire to call, or at least not a willingness to call at this point. Sometimes you have the desire to call and you really want some help, but you're kind of unwilling to put this out on the air, and I get that. But let me know what you think about this idea of shared feelings, because this is something I'm running with. I really hope that a lot of people learn more about this and embrace the idea that, it's not enough just to know that respect is something we think is important in this organization. It's much more important to know that people walking in the door every day are respected, feel respected, and that nobody who works here is not respectful to other people. The expectation is that not only are we respected, but we're respectful of others. Think about the difference and create the ability to create a culture that is healthy and creates that kind of feeling I was talking about with that woman who was leaving the company before that I was working with, just saying, I hate leaving. I have to leave. It's what I need to do for my family, but I love coming to work here. What a great message, huh? Okay. Again, what do you think of that idea? And have you ever had any kind of experiences like that? 203-336-9756. So who am I talking to, please?
Hi, my name is Annie. How are you?
Hi, Annie. I'm fine. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. I almost never listen to the radio, and I just popped it on for the first time in years, and there you were talking about respect, and I had to call.
Okay. Well, I'm glad it worked out so that we got connected, Annie. Well, what's your thoughts about it?
Well, I just wanted to support that, what you're doing. It's just part of my mission is, you know what, we might not all agree on a lot of things, but why can't we respect each other? And I'll take that further and say, when you learn to have compassion for everyone, it leads you quite quickly into a place of love, unconditional love, and it's transformative. And at this time on the planet, we really need that more than ever. So whenever someone is different than you, or someone sets off some triggers in you that make you angry or you don't understand, if you go to a place of compassion, it's amazing how it melts your heart and leads you to that place of love. And that's really what my message is. And I just wanted to underscore your mission there, that now more than ever, we need these types of vibes on the planet. All of these types of emotions of respect, compassion, and love carry a vibration, and it's very transformative.
Yeah, I agree with you, Annie, and I appreciate your call. What did you always feel this way, or was it something that you discovered and thought about later in life?
Well, it's funny that you should ask me that, because I think innately I knew that, but I started working, my sister and I had some really incredible synchronistic experiences, and my sister's not with us anymore. She was actually a pretty famous doctor who was murdered about 9 years ago in Southwest Florida.
Wow.
But so she made national news, but before she was killed, we both understood after an epic Sisters weekend where there were so many bizarre coincidences and synchronicities that followed months of this, that we understood we had a mission to serve humanity. Unfortunately, my sister was murdered before we could figure out exactly what it was. But I think your listeners can handle the fact that it was actually in her death, after her death, that she led me to the rest of the mission. And our mission was, in fact, to serve humanity in a profound way during this time right now on the planet, where there is so much division and so much separation, sadly, so much hatred.
Right.
That how do we bring people together? And so, I always say the Bible has been edited down so many times. Who knows what really, what happened? But I know one thing that they didn't take out, or that was never edited out, and that was Jesus talked about love over and over and over again. They all talked about it. And while Jesus was a master quantum physicist, and he understood the transformative power of love, but he certainly couldn't get into a lesson in quantum physics, although quantum physicists have proven it today that love is transformative. So there really was a message 2,000 years ago about love. And, Peter was like, well, aren't we going to fight the Romans? And Jesus was like, no, we're not going to do that, because it's more powerful. Love is far more powerful. And even Einstein said, right, we can't change a situation from the same place it started, okay? And that's where we are right now. It doesn't matter who's going to be elected. It doesn't matter who sits in the Oval Office. The situation that has been created on this planet right now can only be changed from another perspective, another dimension, if you will, another vibration.
Well,
and that vibration is love.
Well, Annie, it's interesting that you had that to say, and if you believe in an afterlife, I'm sure your sister's looking down and is proud of you. So, thank you so much for the call. I really appreciate it. The show's going to end in just a moment, so I want to say thank you very much for taking the time to call in and share what you're doing.
Thanks for your mission. Take care.
Okay, bye now. So you've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I hope you enjoyed the show, everybody. This is Chuck Wolfe, and you've been listening to WPKN 89.5 FM, listener-supported radio. I'll be back with you on the first and second Wednesdays of every month. Take care, everybody. Bye now. Thanks for listening.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.